Hello YouTube, this is Neon. Today the topic that I'm going to be discussing, I've discussed quite a bit, but it's going to be thoughts on physical and mental disabilities, okay? People who are paraplegic or quadriplegic a lot of times are considered the real disabled people. We live in a material society, a humanist society. So if you apply that to illness, people want to be able to see, touch, taste, feel a person's disability in order to consider it to be real. Because we are a material society, a scientific society, and everything has to be measured in some way. I do think it's important to say that at one time, people who were paraplegic had no rights and no values. People who are paraplegic or quadriplegic, people who aren't able to walk because maybe they've lost a function of one or both legs, though they may not be paraplegic, let's say above the knees, for example. People have had to fight long and hard just to get access to buildings. And in some cases, people who are paraplegic still can get access to buildings. Smaller buildings, smaller businesses, to my understanding, still are not required to this day to have access for people with disabilities. Specifically, I'm referring to people who are paraplegic and get around in a wheelchair. I dated a guy who was paraplegic. We dated off and on for years, and it never seemed to last more than a couple months at a time. It was highly sexual, but it was definitely a love relationship. It wasn't just sex. And I got to learn a lot of stuff about people who are paraplegic. Just in the process of getting to know this person who really, at times, would be considered my lover. So, while I struggled with mental illness, one thing that did help us was the fact that he had a degree in psychology. So, he didn't necessarily look at his being paraplegic as being the real disability, and my having mental illness being the fake disability. However, when we argued a lot, we fought a lot, and one time I remember he really couldn't win the argument, and I remember he said, well, you're just crazy. So that's something where people with mental illness do get attacked, and I think it's unfair. Okay. Now, as a dom, or a dominant in BDSM, I've taken on a lot of subs, and it's been hard to keep them because they don't really want to respect someone who is on SSI, and they don't want to respect someone who struggles with mental illness. They consider us to be losers, and they don't want to have a loser as a dom. Not only that, they don't want to have to introduce us to their family, so when their family says, what do you do for a living? I can say, oh, I'm on SSI. They don't want their family to say, what are you doing with a loser? Right? Almost like it's as if they were dating a homeless person. What are you doing dating a homeless person? I had told this particular submissive about this guy who I had dated off and on, who was paraplegic, and I remember he said, wow, so you know what it's like, or wow, so you dated half a man, or so you know what it's like to date half a man. And I thought, wow, I cannot believe I don't know the word for it, smug, self-satisfied, to make that kind of a statement. That's part of the discrimination against people with physical disabilities. That actually played a role in me putting him on probation, which is part of my disciplinary action against submissives who aren't following my rules. And if he did like another submissive I put on probation, which was he just gave up and I never heard from him again. So, very sad that people have that attitude. I would never date someone who's paraplegic. It's interesting because this person who I dated who was paraplegic, he actually criticized somebody for taking a spot that he didn't consider to have a real disability. There's many disabilities, physical disabilities, that are not as seen, where people sometimes can barely walk from their vehicle to wherever they're going. And so they're able to use the disability parking spots. And occasionally they may have good days where they are able to walk, and they'll want to use a disability spot those days as well because it helps save them time from all the times maybe when they couldn't walk. I don't understand the very exact nature of it, but sometimes people who appear to be able to walk use these spots. And it was interesting that my partner had criticized them. I wanted to try to educate him and debate with him, but I just didn't. I just let him express himself and let it go. It was interesting that he took his disability more serious than someone else's, since he has the wheelchair and he clearly is paralyzed from just below the chest down, and that he took his disability more seriously than someone else who he doesn't necessarily know what their disability is. We need to not judge. With my mental disability, there's other stuff I could take advantage of, such as getting van rides to doctor's appointments and stuff like that, but I've chosen not to because you get the evil eye when you do that. People look at me and see me as an able-bodied person, an able-minded person, and they will give you the evil eye. I judge other people a lot of times who I see get in these vans that pick people up who are disabled, and I'll do the same thing. I'll judge them. They look able-bodied. Why are they taking advantage? And I've seen how other people will look at them in a very hateful manner. So I don't take advantage of a lot of stuff that I probably could, just because that emotional treatment is just too much. Mistreatment of me is just too much. Now, Christopher Reeves, before he passed away, after he had broken his neck in the horse riding accident, he had been directing, and I remember in an interview he said he just basically compared himself to other people who think they have a disability. I thought what he did was a really great injustice to other people, because he was quadriplegic and it's so physical. People can see that he can't move from the neck down. People can see that he has a pump that makes him breathe, that helps him to breathe. His disability is taken very, very seriously, and it's unquestioned. So it's easy for him to cast judgment against other people with mental illness that may be just as debilitating in their ability to function. One thing that people like my ex and people like Christopher Reeve were able to take for granted was that they had a lot of support. His wife was at his beck and call. His wife was his arms and his legs, as well as his emotional support. He had someone looking after him and supporting him. But mental illness, which cannot be seen, it's not perceived to be real. It can be scientifically analyzed, but it takes like brain scans and this kind of stuff to see lack of synapse connections, the chemical imbalances, to see parts of the brain are actually too small or underdeveloped. Things that are really the physical equation of mental illness. The average person can't see that, and they don't take these illnesses seriously, mental illness seriously. So they're not going to be supportive or helpful, and a lot of times those of us who struggle with mental illness, as debilitating as it is, we're alone. We don't have a support system. We don't have what people like my ex, who was paraplegic, had a very supportive family. He admitted to being spoiled and was rather smug about being spoiled. At one time or another, he admitted that people with mental illness really deserve to be spoiled too, and that we don't get spoiled. We're told you have a fake illness, and we're just basically castigated. So I think it's important not to compare. I think it's important for people with physical disabilities to not compare themselves, neither to people with other and different kinds of physical disabilities that they cannot see, nor should they compare themselves with people with mental illnesses and act as though their illnesses are fake and that they don't exist. It really undermines and undercuts and devalues other human beings and just puts more obstacles in their way and makes their lives harder than it already is with the mental illness, as is what I struggle with. I believe that people really shouldn't be comparing themselves to other people just in general. They should not be comparing themselves to other people just in general, and accept the burden that they have and do the best they can to walk with it. So I would also add that if people with mental illness, if they were treated with half the respect and were half as much spoiled and had half as much support because their mental illness is taken seriously, we'd have a lot less suicide. We'd have a lot more people who were able to get off the system, people with mental illness, and be able to move forward and to succeed and to thrive in life. But we have to deal with our mental illness, and then we have to deal with the castigation, the punishment that society gives us. Okay, most of it verbal and passive aggressive. At one time, we would be locked away and treated like animals. We'd have no chance of thriving, no chance of overcoming. Fortunately, that is no longer the case. But society's misjudgments and harsh judgments against us are alive and well, unfortunately. So, if you like this video, being as I'm done, please like, subscribe, share, comment commercials, recommend my videos, do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.